The answer is no.
But wait! There's more!
So yeah, I don't think that Sandman can fit in the new DCU, at least for right now, but I do think down the line, we can make it work. I'll go over that later in the video on how the character can work, but more so why we shouldn't rush to put the Sandman into the DCU just yet.
To face your fears and fantasies in dreams and nightmares that I create, and which I must control, lest they consume and destroy you. That is my purpose and my function.
The Sandman is one of my favorite comic books ever printed. The story, the characters, the themes, and the world that Neil Gaiman created has transcended comic books and has had a large influence on how we tell stories in general. Printed under the Vertigo imprint, which itself was designed to tell readers more mature stories with themes not often told in regular comics. Sandman went through themes of addiction, suicide, revenge, consequences, and even Shakespearean storytelling. For its time, it was a groundbreaking comic, and it revolutionized the way people thought about storytelling in comics. Recently, we got a television series via Netflix, and despite all the concern from fans, I think it was well done. It managed to translate a lot of the stories from the comic series, from the overall story arc to even isolated issues like Dream's conversation with Death, and the cat issue. The cast is solid enough, and though some changes were controversial, including the change of John Constantine's character to a female in the form of Joanna Constantine.
Have we met?
We have business, you and I.
Get in line, bruv. Can't keep God waiting.
I think overall the series was well done, but the change with John Constantine I look at as almost unnecessary, in that we already had a pretty solid live action Constantine in the form of Matt Ryan, who did an awesome interpretation with his own series and his appearances in the Arrowverse. But all this leads us to looking into why we shouldn't involve the Sandman in the DCU just yet, and I have two reasons for this. And then we can go over how we could fit him in the universe down the line. The first is the story itself. The Sandman story is pretty isolated from the rest of the DC universe, despite existing within it canonically, and should have a chance to finish the story before the larger DC studios get involved. Second is the fact that the current timeline of the DCU wouldn't align with the timeline that the Sandman is following at the moment, which I know sounds weird considering that the series has brought things in a modern time as opposed to the time period used in the comic. But let's go over the story itself, because that will clear up what I mean by the second point. The story that the Sandman series is currently going over is a story of the first 76 issues of the series that ran in the 90s. The first season roughly ran through, I would say, 10 to 20 issues, so I expect if Netflix does intend to finish the series outright, it would lend itself to another 3 to 4 seasons at a minimum. But that's if Netflix doesn't do something stupid like canceling the show, which they are known for.
Meanwhile, my kingdom had fallen apart. My tools long since stolen and scattered. And so I embarked upon a journey to find them.
I think The Sandman is a wonderful story that definitely deserves to be told in full without interruption, as there are many singular and episodic stories, including the critically acclaimed Midsummer Night's Dream issue that received the World Fantasy Award. And at least, I hope to be able to see the Season of the Mist arc, where Lucifer abdicates her throne, literally putting the fate of hell in the hands of Dream. For this reason alone, I prefer for Netflix to finish out the Sandman series. In a sense, it would be better for DC overall to let the Sandman series finish out before including the character, as the Sandman series ends with what you would call a death, rebirth, reconfiguration of Dream into the Daniel version. This version of the character is the current canonical version of the character in the comics, and does pop up sporadically in big crisis events, including a recent appearance in the Dark Metal event a few years back. It wouldn't make sense timeline wise with the stories that DC Studios want to dip into to include the old version of Dream, as that character doesn't cross over with too many events, whereas the Daniel version of the character has made a decent amount of appearances, especially in his encounters with Batman and Superman. That being said, I do think there's a place for the Daniel version of the character in the DCU, and that is for the eventual Crisis movie. It wouldn't make sense for DC not to build to a Crisis movie down the line, as that is what DC is known for, and the writing style and pacing of DC is built for these kind of events. This is where we could see a cameo scene with the Daniel version of the character assisting the heroes, not necessarily with the major fight, but definitely with information or leading them to their next destination. as the crisis events tend to follow the hero's scavenger hunt-like journey in order to find a way to defeat these over-the-top villains. Dream doesn't need to be a constant presence in every movie, but sporadic cameo appearances can serve to expand the world of DC to mainstream audiences and really set it apart from the typical Marvel movie formula. These are my thoughts though. If you agree with me or disagree with me, sound off in the comments below. Remember to hit that like button, and if you enjoyed the video, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on my next video. That being said, and as always, take care and have an awesome day. And if you want to know more about the Sandman series, click this video right here to see about things that you may have missed in the Sandman series.